Welcome everyone, my screen name is Covert Muffin, and today we have a very, very special event. We are celebrating the DK Festival. Oh, yes! My screen name is Covert Muffin, once again, Covert Muffin. And today I'm very, very excited, because there's a couple of things that I am very passionate about, and they're more sort of like aspects rather than actual activities. And one of them is just straight up explaining things. I love to explain things. I'm a scientist. I love mathematics. I love learning and being really passionate about it. And until a couple of years ago, like maybe like 6 years ago, I didn't start really feeling passionate about video games. Because I had been sort of like raised in sort of a setting that wasn't geared towards video games. Like, video games was seen as a distraction and not necessarily something that was beneficial to health. And that every single instance of doing video games was bad. So, in this sense, it took me a lot. And I'd always played a lot of video games when I was a kid. And I would sort of be that kid that would, like, sneak my Game Boy up into my room in order to be able to play it while I was falling asleep at night. I would stay up way too late. And then in high school, I would only get, like, 2 hours of sleep at night because after I would get out of my after-school activities by, like, 6 or 7 p.m., I would eat supper, and then around 8 p.m. to 2 a.m., I would be drilling mechanics and competitively playing video games. I did Jedi Knight 2 multiplayer and Dota All-Stars. Those were not two huge games. And then also Warcraft 3 Arcade, more geared towards like tower defenses and survival-esque games. I loved those scenes and spending lots of time with those. And then I would wake up, and then I would start my homework at around like 4 a.m., and then I would go to bed around 5, and then I would wake up at 6 or 7 in the morning, and then I would rush everything together and go to school and do it all over again. And I did that for about 3 years in high school. And then I would sleep like 13 to 20 hours on Friday night and like Saturday night. And so this was always sort of a, well, late at night my mom like can't tell me that what I'm doing is bad sort of a thing. Like, it wasn't like a conscious thing, like I was avoiding it, but it was sort of the time when I could spend all of my energy and all of my focus to improving and learning and really loving the experience. And then in undergrad, I sort of put a lot of that on the back burner, and playing video games became casual. And then that's when I started watching Day 9 TV, which was my sophomore year of undergraduate in 2009, 2010. And at this point, I still didn't realize that my love for video games was like truly a passion and something that I used to define me as a person. And then my brother was like, "Hey, you should watch Day 9 because he's just like you. He loves mechanistically and methodically breaking down video games into mechanics, and he's really passionate about learning, and he's also really charismatic too. And so you would like absolutely love him." And so I did. And then from then on, I've been a huge proponent to watching Day 9 and surrounding myself with people who are also like-minded about being a better gamer, which is all about celebrating being passionate about video games, learning and improving, and then just being very welcoming and nice to the people around you. And so I've been very fortunate to be a part of the community for about 4 years, I want to say. About 4 years. Because I was a lurker. I lurked in his channel because I'm very introverted. And so that was sort of my introduction to StarCraft 2, where he methodically break down the game instead of playing lots of games against other people, which is not something I enjoy doing. I'm not a very competitive person. I love diving into the meta and like establishing what is good and developing mechanics and these weird ideas that actually work and break apart the established meta and such like that. I loved doing that stuff. And so Day 9 was sort of the person who said, you can do that, and that's fucking awesome too. So I would spend hours and hours a day, not playing against other people, just developing StarCraft 2 mechanics and stuff like that. And then from that, I met a bunch of wonderful people, and then made lots of long-term friends and such like that. And so this event today is sort of me celebrating and trying to give back to the community what I have sort of applied from my experience of growing, not just as a speedrunner, but also as a person who agrees that video gaming is an important part of my life and that it has made me a better person, and then also has been really incredible for me and something that I am very proud to define myself as said person. So today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about how to start speedrunning, because there's, just like with the stigmatic idea about video gaming, like gaming is not healthy and not good, there's this also sort of idea of speedrunners having sort of a different tier of video game players that is somehow unobtainable to most people. And this is not true. This is completely false. 100% false. And in fact, I was one of those believers, even though I'm usually much more of like a try-hard, I put a lot of effort into energy into playing video games, but I still would watch AGDQ and SGDQ and just be like, oh my god, this is like fucking insane. And I started watching AGDQ my junior year of college. So a year after I started watching Day 9, I started watching the GDQs. That was really one of my favorite events that I look forward to each winter and each summer was, the Summer Games Done Quick and the Awesome Games Done Quick speedrun marathons. And if you don't know what AGDQ and SGDQ are, they are 7 days, 24 hours per day of a streamathon on twitch.tv where they raise money for a charitable cause. And when they started out, they raised like a few hundreds of dollars to a few $1,000s, and now they're raising like 1.5 million in a 7-day time span. In this past SGDQ, I actually performed Jedi Knight Academy, which is a primary game I speedrun, but we'll talk about that a bit later. And that was sort of my, holy shit, I can't believe these people are breaking apart these games that I love. And then I found new loves for games that I'd never thought of trying out. And I actually bought games because I saw the speedruns. I was like, I want to try playing that casually because that looks like a lot of fun. And so there's this great proponent. I would watch these like until the odd hours into the morning, like every single time it would come on. But I still thought like speedrunning was not something that I could do, and that it would not be something I would be interested in putting a lot of time and effort and energy into. However, it was. Surprise! It turns out I am sort of geared from childhood to be a bit of a speedrunner. So why don't we go ahead and jump right in. What I have prepared is actually a slideshow presentation that we're going to do sort of to talk about this idea of getting into speedrunning. So let's go ahead and go over to, yes, this overlay. Okay. And then I just have to do a quick few things so that I can see Twitch chat still. Hopefully this is still good. This speech Bible thump. Alright, let's jump into it. Okay, so here we are, starting to Speedrun 101. How and why becoming a scientist of video games is enjoyable and easier than anticipated. Like I said, I am a scientist. I love learning and developing and refining mechanics. And speedrunning is very much so that. So, first of all, what is the Day Night Festival, which is why we're here, why I'm doing this. Why I took a lot of time developing and thinking about this over the past couple of weeks. And so the Day Night Festival is celebrating being passionate about playing games for fun, having a welcoming community, and learning and improving. So it's not necessarily celebrating fans of Day 9 TV, okay? It's celebrating the idea of why we play video games and why we're proud to be gamers. And of course, it's modeled after the manifesto proposed by Day 9. If you go to day9.tv, I believe it's day9.tv still. And on that website, if you click on the manifesto button, it's just unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. And so he is sort of the proponent, the driving force that sort of catalyzed this entire process of us throwing this event on. But he's not the sole reason we do it. We do it for the community. So that being said, the festival itself features a variety of streamers who celebrate these very notions. So community-oriented games are being streamed as well. People are being brought in all together. Thank you, Ghost. Thank you so much. Ghost Soccer just posted a link for people on YouTube and the Twitch highlight. That being said, though, there are other streamers also streaming. So if you're currently watching this, but you would like to play games instead of listening to me talk about getting into speedrunning, that's completely awesome. Please feel free to go off and do so, and feel free to come back and tell me about your experiences. Tell me how awesome everybody else is, because there's so many amazing streams going on. And Maximus is doing a cooking stream. It's absolutely amazing. Anyways, the next idea, besides community-oriented games, is content-specialized streams. So I'm doing a speedrunning-based stream, whereas Maximus is doing like a cooking-based content stream, etc., etc. And then there's creative interactive streams as well. So the creative portion of twitch.tv, which is sort of like arts and crafts, being developed and made live on stream. There's also those components. So we sort of have a well-rounded bit of everything going on tonight, which is so exciting. So that being said, though, if you would like a list of the other streams, all you have to do is head to http://daynightfestival.net, or you can just type !DK Festival in the Twitch chat, and then it should give a Nightbot message that's on a cooldown that will give you just a hyperlink you can click on, which is a bit simpler than trying to type this all out. So that being said, why don't we go on and move on. So who or what is Covert Muffin? So I am Covert Muffin. I'm sort of known by various groups and denominations of people. Not enough jokes! Shit. Oh no, I'm already screwing up. That being said, just a quick introduction about myself. If you would like to see my speedrunning profile, all you have to do is go to speedrun.com/user/covertmuffin, or on my Twitch page in the info down below. I have links to a bunch of runs that I've done in the past. However, if you want my official submissions to speedrun.com, that is the link that you would click. That being said, most recently, most people now know me for my appearance at this past Summer Games Done Quick 2016, where I did a speedrun of Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy, which is probably the game I've burnt the most time into speedrunning. That being said, though, also I have street cred as a member of the Day Knights, which is day9.tv is his Twitch channel. If you go follow him and see his shows. Day9 was a famous sort of esports StarCraft 2 caster, and then just started his own Day9 Daily, where he was breaking down StarCraft 2 content, which I was a part of. And one of the series he did was known as Fun Day Monday, which was a StarCraft 2 series where he would oppose a certain constraint to viewers, and then they would go on to competitive 1 versus 1 StarCraft 2 and play ladder games following that constraint and trying to win games. And so I had, this was a very comical show and very funny, and Day9 would just be absolutely ridiculous and make tons of jokes and stuff like that. And so I was a frequent submitter, and also I got featured a good number of times, like 4, 5, or 6 times on Fun Day Monday, where he would cast my games. And so some of the memes that came from that were like tickle tickle and being offensively good-mannered, because I have a tendency to be very good-mannered in general. That being said, I've also participated in a lot of community events surrounding the Day Knights in the past as well. That being said, also just sort of as a side effect, when I started streaming, I did a lot of shoutcasting for StarCraft 2 and Heroes of the Storm. I did community games around the Day Knights. Day Night Show Matches, which was a 1 versus 1 StarCraft 2 show match, live show matches of members of the community, ranging from all different skill levels. And then I also threw on and hosted my own stream, which was Teamwork Tuesday, where I would bring in viewers in order to celebrate friendship by playing games of Heroes of the Storm against each other. And we would pick teams and stuff, and then I would bring on a guest co-caster with me, and we would cast games of Heroes. And that was a lot of fun. It was a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun. And then once again, the SGDQ performance, I don't know why that's on there twice. That's a mistake. Rip. And then this picture right under my webcam is of when I took a selfie right at the end of the performance. So what is a speedrun? So this is sort of the first important question that anybody can ask is, what the fuck is a speedrun, okay? So if you don't know what an actual speedrun is, it's trying to play through a game to a certain goal in the shortest period of time possible. And so there's many different types of speedruns where you just sort of think it's like one overarching thing, but it's not. There's many different types of speedrunnings. Like Cities and Skylines is sort of a controlling an urban growth and urban sprawl-esque macro management style of a speedrun, whereas something like Jedi Knight Academy is a first/second/third person-esque game where you are controlling a single character and then trying to do it through micro mechanics instead of macro style play. And so just like with science, where science has many different fields, they're all considered sciences like biology, chemistry and physics, and yeah, even psychology, right? But they're vastly different in the way that they approach sort of the aspect of science and learning and improving. And that's sort of the same way for speedrun. So speedrun is not sort of a single thing, but it's more of a category of a style of approaching gaming. And that is the science of video games. And so this is Sanic, which is a meme that was developed because someone had a lot of their content pulled down because they made Sonic gotta go fast, and so they created this character named Sanic that has nothing to do with Sonic, so they don't break any sort of trademark. That being said, there's a lot to learn about speedrunning, especially in the way of terminology. So if you're new to speedrunning or you don't know necessarily what's going on, I'm just going to go over and briefly explain a bunch of common terms that you'll hear just thrown around, and also sort of explain them of how they actually are so you don't get sort of confused. Because there's a lot of things in this list that people think they understand, they know what it means, but they actually just are completely wrong. So that being said, the first thing to talk about is glitches versus exploits. And this is like one of my favorite things to talk about, because this is one of the biggest things people misrepresent, is the idea of what is a glitch. And so an exploit is something that was intended by the game developers that players are taking advantage of, whereas a glitch is something that is unintended by the game developers that players are taking advantage of. So, for example, an exploit in Jedi Knight Academy could be something like crouch climbing, right? Whereas whenever you jump and you press the crouch button, it actually raises your hitbox a little bit, which is intended by the game developers for your hitbox to shrink. And so that includes going from bottom up, so when you're in the air, this brings up your hitbox a little, so you can actually get a tiny bit higher than was sort of expected. However, a glitch might be going out of bounds by applying the crouch climb technique of raising your hitbox to be able to get out of bounds. And so going out of bounds is a glitch because the developers did not intend you to be able to go out of bounds. Collision box, please. Yeah, thank you, Sui. Collision box instead of a hitbox. I always mix those up as well. For all intents and purposes, if I say hitbox, I also mean collision box as well, because they're pretty similar. That being said, the next point is to be basic categories, which is any percent, 100% glitchless, and individual level, or IL. And so these are some of the categories that you see most frequently in speedruns. Any percent is the sort of go all, no restrictions really at all. It's just you start a new game and then you try and finish it as quickly as possible. And so this could mean that you start the game, warp to the end of the game, and ta-da, it's over, right? You just warp to the end credits. And so sometimes there are little addendums where they will edit any percent and say, you can't do this trick. But just the overarching idea is any percent just means you play the game and everything is fair game. 100% is very complicated to explain fully accurately because it's very, very different for every single game that is speedrun. But basically what 100% is you try and fulfill every single objective that the game throws at you, and you also collect all collectibles and complete everything that you can in the game. So, like, for example, in Academy, it would be very, very difficult to do a 100% run because there's random pickups that are just sort of generated randomly, not randomly, but they're placed around the map that we would never collect. Like, there's a bunch of health kits on Yavin 2 that you would never use, etc., etc. And so, exactly what does 100% mean for a run is different for every single run. Whereas Legend of Zelda, it's a bit easier to sort of define 100% because there are items that you can collect that are very unique. Hi, little Miss Leo! Hi! So that being said, 100% is very dependent on the game, but the idea is that you complete every single thing that you can and collect every single thing that you can. That being said, glitchless is a much more sort of tapered approach to speedrunning, and there can be 100% glitchless or any percent glitchless, etc., etc. But glitchless is usually in any percent category. That means you will be able to use exploits, but you will not be able to use glitches. Breathing, because I just don't stop talking. Yeah, exactly what Kralox is saying. Oblivion has like a 5-minute any percent. Yeah, absolutely. Like there's so many crazy things in Oblivion. Like they use wrong warping and all that stuff. It's pretty incredible. All right, awesome, Ghosty. Thank you. No worries. You should run Typing the Dead. Oh boy. That being said, though, an individual level in IL, I get this question a lot, so I just threw it in here, is just a single level or a single component of a speedrun or a certain goal in a certain section of a speedrun that you just complete as quickly as possible. And so timing principles for these categories can vary, but usually it's right when you start that thing and then right when you end that thing, and it's out of your control is sort of very, very important. So when it's out of your control, that is sort of when it ends. That being said, next up is out of bounds versus a sequence break versus a wrong warp. And so out of bounds is basically on a made level by the developers. If you're able to get outside of the area or parameters that the developers say that your model can exist in, that is considered out of bounds. So if you go outside like an invisible wall or you get on top of an invisible wall, etc., etc., this is OOB or out of bounds. Next up is sequence break. So a sequence break is doing an objective in a different order than intended by the game developers. And so this is sort of a, well, they want you to get this piece and then backtrack in order to be able to move on into the level by using this key on the door that you can only get, and then you have to backtrack to that locked door and go through it. But if we find a way to clip through the door, right, instead of having to go get the key, that is a sequence break. So when you do intended things by the game developers out of order, that is known as a sequence break. And it's a very, very large component of speedrunning. That being said, last but not least is something known as a wrong warp. And this is sort of very, very famous in speedruns like Elder Scrolls Oblivion and most notably Ocarina of Time, Legend of Zelda. Very, very great examples of wrong warping where you will trick the game or sort of manipulate the game into having something send you to a location or a part of the game that is not intended by the game developers. So like, for example, you go through a door that's supposed to take you into a certain town, and then it actually teleports you outside of another door in another town, right? And so this is a wrong warp. Hey, Saji! Yes, yeah. Hey, Helen, yeah, exactly. That being said, the next one, which I'm very excited to talk about, which is a frame. And the definition of a frame is the shortest period of time or the shortest difference in time that the game uses to internally decide between an action. So a frame is like the shortest period of time that the game counts by. So for example, some games run at 60 frames per second, some games run at 30 frames per second, which are very normal for older game systems, et cetera, et cetera. And so frame rate is a very important concept. And so when someone's like, oh yeah, those are one frame trick, well, it doesn't necessarily mean it's really, really fast. Like, excuse me, if it's 1/20th of a second, right, that's like 0.05 seconds, okay? So you just divide 1 second, and it's usually that fraction of a second. So oh, thank you, Saji. Yeah, it was a really good run. That was insane. I got a PB earlier today. So the frame is sort of a denomination of number of actions like per second. And so this is sort of the quickest that you can force a character to like react or interact, etc., etc., etc. That being said, next up is the concept of RTA versus IGT versus time without loads. So RTA, oh shit, what is it? It's like real time applied or real time action or something like that. It's something like that. I always forget what the A stands for. IGT stands for in-game time, and then TWL is time without loads. So RTA is if I was to start a time on the cell phone, right? If I just started a timer that's completely independent of everything else to deal with the speed run, and then just let it run, and I start it, and then I start it right immediately when I start playing, and then right when I finish the run, I hit done. That is RTA. It's just completely independent of everything. Real-time attack. Damn it. Oh, I always forget the A. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. That being said, in-game time is based on the game's internal counting system. And so usually games have some sort of internal timer. Games that are very famous for being speedrun and in-game time are games like 007, GoldenEye. They do their time on the leaderboards based on in-game time. Minesweeper is another speedrun that uses in-game time, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's the game owns counting mechanism. Whereas with Jedi Knight Academy, in-game time is a horrible representation of how fast you're going, because every single time you skip a cutscene, it jumps forward those like 16 seconds of the cutscene. So really, skipping the cutscene only took you like 1 to 2 seconds, but it counts 16 in-game time seconds having gone by. And so, based on the way the game propagates time, it's good or bad depending on what game you're doing. So that being said, time without loads is usually run by a third-party software that reads various parts of the memory or of the code in the game. And when the game does something, it stops the timer, and then it starts it. So the goal of time without loads is every single time you can do something, you can actively do something to go faster, the timer is running. But when the game is sort of out of your control, it will pause the timer. And that is sort of the concept of time without loads. And that's usually sort of the ideal situation, but it's very hard to actually do this perfectly or accurately, and it's a huge actual problem and a huge debate point, like we've been doing with ILs in the speedrunning community for Jedi Knight Academy, where we're sort of like, well, how do we do time without loads? How do we properly propagate this time and be able to program this into live split, which has caused us tons of issues over the past couple of months, and has been a huge headache in general. Yes, yeah, exactly, Saji, yeah. It's the best and the worst. That being said, the next term to define is buffering inputs. So what a buffer is, or what buffering inputs is, actively like doing the action before your character is able to do so. So for example, if I'm holding down spacebar while I'm falling down, the moment I touch the ground, he will start a new jump. So I'm doing an action ahead of time in order to be able to reduce the amount of time before the ability to do the action to when the action actually happens. So buffering inputs is a very, very important concept, and very important to decide, can I do this ahead of time, can I not? So being able to get ready in action, to ready in action before your character actually does it, is known as buffering an input. All right, next up is a personal best, which is a PB, and this is the best time that you have completed for this overall speed run. Next up is a world record, and this is the person with the personal best that takes the least amount of time. And so that being said, what the PB actually means for different categories can also change depending on timing methods. Yes, exactly, Sue. Yeah. You should have made individual slides for this, Kipo. Yeah, I ran out of time, Saji. That's like really true. Next up is the concept of luck versus RNG versus manipulation. And so manipulation is a good one to talk about. First, well, no, RNG. RNG is. So what RNG stands for is random number generator or random number generated. And so this is a concept that the game has a probability of the CPU or the AI of doing a certain thing. So like an NPC, a non-player character, which attack does he do? He has 8 different attacks. Well, which attack will it do? And then it says, oh, there's a probability of the character doing this attack, this attack, and this attack, and it's randomly decided in the game. And there's usually nothing you can do about RNG. This is a very common thing for people to blame, is like, oh, I got really bad RNG there, because it's usually out of your control. However, a manipulation is taking these probabilities and skewing them to make some actions more probable than others. Like, if there's a chance the AI will attack, jump, or stand still, you clearly want it to stand still and do nothing, right? You want it to stand still and do nothing. And so if there's certain things you can do to get the AI to stand still and do nothing, this is known as a manipulation. Suey. That being said, luck is the idea of you just deciding to do something, but you are not actually manipulating the AI. You're just guessing in the moment, and then it just so happens to work out. And so this is sort of the idea of luck. So whereas RNG is dependent on the game itself, luck is dependent on the player, not the game. Whereas RNG is completely dealing with the game, and then manipulation is the player affecting the game in some way or far. Or any fears on it. Oh no, that's okay, Sui. Please feel free to. Next up is tool-assisted speedruns, or a task, and this is playing through a game using some other component to assist you in playing the game. So, like, for example, if you write a script of keyboard commands out, so you press one button and it does multiple commands, this is known as a tool assistance, etc., etc. And so this is usually banned in normal speedruns, but also tasks is very, very funny, where they program out every single frame of the speedrun and which inputs they're doing, and then they just hit the play button, and then it just completes the speedrun. No player can affect me, Boba. Oh no, what's in the present? Hang on, I have to hover my mouse over this. Oh my god, Boba. Oh man. Next up is sort of an important concept also, is the casual versus competitive versus speedrun. And so, a speedrun, just as I defined earlier, is trying to play a game with the given parameters as quickly as possible, whereas competitive is you are playing against someone else and you are trying to play better than the other person. So all of the sum of the actions you do and all of the sum of the actions they do, somehow your formula and set of actions are better than theirs, and therefore you win. However, a casual is sort of the concept of not being competitive, not doing a speed run, but you are just playing a game for the sake of playing the game. And that's about it. That being said, last but not least, resetting and ripping runs. So RIP stands for rest in peace, which is a very common acronym in everyday life. And this means that your run has died, and there is nothing to do that could redeem it or reach your PB or your set goal for yourself for the time you're aiming for. And then resetting a run means that you cancel out the time, whatever time that is. You stop the timer, it resets, and and then you start a new run. Awesome. You missed world record? No, I hit world record. Awesome. Okay, so now that we've just gone over all of those boring definitions, thank you so much for staying with me. The next sort of idea to talk about is what is required to speedrun. And so, like, what are the things that are sort of expected of a speedrunner every single time they start a run? Well, first of all, you want to follow the rules of the game and the category. So it's important to understand sort of, are things outlawed in certain categories, right? If I'm going to run glitchless, is this considered a glitch or not? Like, what I'm doing here. And so it's important to be able to say, this is a glitch or this is an exploit, and then be able to apply that to your run. Next up is video proof. A lot of submissions for official leaderboards, most of them actually require video proof of your speedrun. It's not enough to say, oh, look at this, here's a screenshot of the time I just got, because you could have just started the timer and stopped the timer and then taken a screenshot, right? And so this is done by using, when you speedrun a PC game, by using OBS or XSplit, or if you're using a console game like a 3DS, or a PlayStation or an Xbox style game, then using a capture card to be able to then encode it onto your computer, and then you record it there somehow as well. That being said, next up, it's usually required to have a visible RTA timer that is going. Sometimes RTA timers aren't necessary if you have a timer that is within the way the game itself is being timed for the speedrun. But it's very important to have a 1-to-1 time ratio. And what this means is that 1 second on the timer is indeed 1 second in real life, right? So if you have something that's counting slower seconds, say, oh, when 1 second of real time passes, only 0.5 seconds on my timer passes, right? You're obviously going to have a fucking faster time than someone who does the same speedrun as you. So it's very, very important that you make sure that the timer is synced up. And this is why Live Split is amazing, because it works. It works. We know it works. That being said, sort of the next component after you finish the speedrun is a moderator or the community to approve for the leaderboards. So the leaderboards are actually run by the individual communities themselves, and then the rules are sort of discussed by people and then decided on what is the most fair and best to compare other people's speedruns across. Because there's a lot of discussion and development for how the leaderboards are to be organized in order to be able to best represent your community. And so this is why, like, speedrunning is very, very community-oriented to begin with, is because they need to decide on the rule sets to be able to get those times up, to be able to show people everywhere. Yeah, awesome. And then, of course, what is required to speedrun? You need to enjoy the game. If you don't enjoy the game, you're gonna have a bad time. Don't forget to tie your shoes. So that being said, we're now moving on to the actual portion that I have really planned out and done a lot with, which is my 3-step process of how to start speedrunning. And so this is it. This one slide is what I tell every single person that ever asks me, how did you start speedrunning? Or what does someone need to do in order to start speedrunning? And this is it. This is the golden formula. So the first, and I have extra slides that are going to go through each of these steps extensively. That being said, though, step 1 is to choose a game you enjoy playing. So this is very, very important that you enjoy the game. Otherwise, you are going to get burnt out, or you're going to get bored, or you're going to get even more frustrated and just be like, why am I doing this? And then you'll just stop after a while. It's very, very important. And that being said, people enjoy playing a game for different reasons. And it's sort of important to decide why you enjoy playing that game and is that transferable to a speedrun. And we'll talk about that. That being said, number 2 is watch speedruns of desired game and community content that's developed around that speedrun. And so there will be people who make like guide videos and also lots of different speedruns that are usually posted on speedrun.com. It's very important to get sort of a scope of what to expect when you try and speedrun the game. And then last but not least is reaching out to those respective communities. Communities. This is like so amazing and so important for being able to get into a speed run. Yes, it's so incredible, and that it cannot be underestimated. And that is absolutely the third and final step. But step one.